It's time for the news.
Hello there and welcome to the English program of Radio Alger International. First, the top stories of the news. Military coup plotters in Niger, a country plagued by terrorist violence and hitherto in allied Western countries, announced on national television on Wednesday evening that they had overthrown the democratically elected Mohamed Bazoum, who had been in power since 2021. The situation in Niger, where President Mohamed Bazoum was held back on Wednesday by members of the Presidential Guard, aroused deep concern among the international community. Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdurrahman arrived Wednesday evening in St. Petersburg in the Russian Federation to take part in the proceedings of the Second Russia-Africa Summit and its Economic and Humanitarian Forum in its capacity as representative of the President of the Republic, Mr. Majid Tebboune. These are the major developments, and now the news in detail from Radio Alger International. This is Mohamed Balaswan reporting. First in our news file, military coup plotters in Niger, a country plagued by terrorist violence and hitherto in allied Western countries, announced on national television on Wednesday evening that they had overthrown the democratically elected Mohamed Bazoum, who had been in power since 2021. After Mali and Burkina Faso, Niger becomes the third country in the Sahel undermined by attacks from groups linked by the Daesh terrorist group and Al-Qaeda to experience a coup d'etat since 2020. The regime of Niger, President Mohamed Bazoum, who has himself been kidnapped by military coup plotters in Niamey who claim to have overthrown him, rejected the coup on Thursday, assuring to represent the legitimate authorities and calling on the factions or the factious officers to engage in dialogue. The hard-won gains will be safeguarded. All freedom and democratic-loving Nigerians will see to it, declared President Bazoum in a message posted on Thursday morning on Twitter, a few hours after the military announced on national television that it had overthrown the democratically elected president in 2021. We have the legitimate legal authorities, said Massoudou Hassoumi, head of Niger's diplomacy and interim head of the government, in the absence of Prime Minister, who was away at the time of the coup. Still in this land, the situation in Niger, where President Mohamed Bazoum was held back on Wednesday by members of the Presidential Guard, aroused deep concern among the international community, who called for the preservation of political stability and institutions in this country of the Sahel. Algeria said it was following with deep concern the developments of the situation in Niger, strongly condemning the coup attempt taking place there. Said Bouazi has more in this report.
In a press release issued by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the national community abroad, Algeria reaffirmed its attachment to the cardinal principles that guide the collective action of African states within the African Union, including notably the categorical rejection of unconstitutional changes of government. Algeria urges that an end be put to this unacceptable offense to the constitutional order and to the serious violation of the requirements of the rule of law, and stresses the imperative for all to work towards the preservation of the political and institutional stability of the Republic of Niger. On the instructions of the President of the Republic, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ahmed Attaf, had a telephone conversation with his Nigerian counterpart, Massoudou Hassoumi. For his part, UN Chief Antonio Guterres condemned with the strongest words and great firmness any attempt to seize power by force and undermining democratic governance, peace and stability in Niger, and called on all the actors concerned to show restraint and to ensure the protection of the constitutional order, according to his spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric. In a statement, the President of the African Union Commission, Moussa Faki Mahamat, for his part, strongly condemned such acts on the part of members of the Presidential Guard in total betrayal of their republican duty, asking them to cease immediately this unacceptable enterprise. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has condemned in the strongest terms the attempt to seize power by force underway in Niger and called on those responsible to immediately and unconditionally release President Bazoum. The United States said it was deeply concerned by the situation in Niger and called for the immediate and unconditional release of President Bazoum. From Brussels, the European Union, through its head of diplomacy, Joseph Borrell, condemned any attempt to destabilize democracy and threaten the stability of Niger. Joseph Borrell said he was very concerned by the events underway in Niamey in a message posted on Twitter. The same tone was heard from France, which associated itself with the appeals of the African Union and ECOWAS to restore the integrity of Niger's democratic institutions.
Meanwhile, a West African mediation team will attempt today, Thursday, to find a solution to the coup attempt underway in Niger, where the head of state, Mohamed Bazoum, was still being held on Wednesday evening by members of the Presidential Guard. After a meeting in Abuja with Benin's President, Patrice Talon, his Nigerian counterpart, Bola Tinubu, announced that President Talon was leaving for Niamey to mediate with the Presidential Guard and President Bazoum with a view to finding an agreement. In other topical news, Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdulrahman arrived Wednesday evening in St. Petersburg in the Russian Federation to take part in the proceedings of the Second Russian-African Summit and its Economic and Humanitarian Forum in his capacity as representative of the President of the Republic, Mr. Ahmadji Tebboune. Held on Thursday and Friday in St. Petersburg, this meeting will be devoted to examining the means of cooperation and multilateral strategic partnership between Russia and the African continent. Under the theme for peace, security, and development, the summit will be attended by representatives of 49 African countries, including 17 heads of state, who will, with the aim of examining ways of diversing cooperation, particularly in the political, security, and economic spheres, as well as in the science, technical, cultural, and humanitarian fields. The meeting will also adopt an action plan for the Russian-African Partnership Forum 2023-2026. Our radio journalist, Bariza Ben-Razak, present at the St. Petersburg Summit, made the following statement together with a pharmaceutical company representative based in Russia. Let's listen.
This year, we have started the great cooperation with African countries, North Africa, South Africa, West and East Africa, all the African continent. We offer to Africa not only to sell our drugs, they're good drugs, they're high quality drugs for treatment of socially important diseases, but also we offer the construction, the development of national African pharmaceutical industries. We can go into technological transfer, engineering of plants, and make the good long-term partnership based on the high quality and long years of expertise of our Russian scientists. We are looking forward to partnering with Algerian companies, to work with the Algerian government to present our best, our scientific experience, our pharmaceutical, and we're looking forward to get in touch with them here in this forum. This is the great opportunity.
In domestic news, the Minister of Interior, Local Assemblies and Country Planning, Brahim Merad, has said that all the forest fires recorded recently in several of the country's provinces have been contained. proceeding with the installation of the multi-sector commission responsible for examining the compensation claims of those affected by recent forest fires, Mr. Brahim Arad assured that all the fires recorded in several of the country's provinces had been extinguished, adding the last outbreak had been contained on Wednesday afternoon. On this occasion, the minister renewed his sincere condolences to the families of the civilian and military victims before observing a minute of silence and reciting the Fatiha, or opening chapter of the Holy Quran, on their memory. Meanwhile, the Minister of Interior, Local Assemblies and Country Planning, Brahim Arad, has discussed in a telephone conversation with his Tunisian counterpart, Kamal Fiki, ways of strengthening cooperation between the two brotherly countries in the field of forest fighting, said a press release from the ministry. The Tunisian Minister Kamal Fiki expressed his condolences to the victims of the forest fires in some of the country's provinces, the statement said. Brahim Arad inquired about the developments in the situation following the forest fires that broke out in certain regions of Tunisia at the same source. In this land, the Minister of National Solidarity, Family and the Status of Women, Kavita Kriku, has convened a coordination meeting via video conference with the local directors of Social Action and Solidarity, DAS, in the provinces affected by the forest fires with a view to supervising and assessing the solidarity operations while ensuring that aid is channeled to those most in need. Let's shift now to the Western Sahara file. The president of the Summer University for Executives of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic and the Polisario Front, Hamma Salama, has affirmed that the summer school will see during its 11th edition, scheduled for next August, the organization of open days on the development of the Sahrawi question in different fields. Sir Bouazi has the details in this report.
The member of the National Secretariat of the Polisario Front explained during a press conference in Shahid al-Hafid in the Sahrawi refugee camps that the summer university is a tradition, a stopover solidarity, and an opportunity for the executives of the state and the front to deepen knowledge, forge experiences, and strengthen capacities in order to support the process of institutional building of the Sahrawi state in the present and in the future, and to face the rapid changes in the world and the region, particularly in this situation marked by a direct confrontation with the Moroccan occupier since November 13, 2020. Organized under the slogan "Half a Century of Resistance, Determination to Win," the summer school this year chose the name of the Shahid Abdullah Lahbi Bilal to retrace the course of 50 years of existence strewn with the values and ideals with which the people have become imbued in their struggle for freedom and dignity. The president of the Summer University, Hamma Salama, also informed that the university will organize several communications dealing with the Sahrawi question under different particular political and legal angles, which is capable of contributing to the building and development of the institutions of the Sahrawi state and of the Polisario Front. He pointed out that the Summer University would also feature other communications on the peaceful resistance in the occupied territories, the human rights situation, the battle for the Sahrawi natural resources, and the war and its impact on the enemy. Hamma Salama added that the themes discussed will aim to enlighten the Sahrawi public opinion, notably the executives taking part in the university, for better governance and management of the various institutions of the Sahrawi state and the Polisario Front.
Meanwhile, units of the Sahrawi People's Liberation Army, SPLA, have bombarded Moroccan occupation forces in the Hausa sector, the Sahrawi Ministry of Defense said in its communique number 839. According to the communique reported by the Sahrawi press agency SPS, advanced detachment of the SPLA units targeted the entrenchments of the Moroccan occupation forces in the Federal Tel Ash region, Hausa sector. Let's move on now to the Middle East equation. The leader of the two main Palestinian movements met in Ankara on Wednesday at the home of Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan ahead of a meeting of all the factions in Cairo on Sunday. According to the Turkish presidency, the president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, and Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh were received together at the presidential palace. Said Bouazi tells us more in this report.
President Erdogan has long enjoyed good relations with the two leaders and intends to throw all his weight behind Palestinian reconciliation. The last meeting between the two Palestinian leaders, and the first after years of estrangement, was over a year ago on 5th July 2022 in Algiers. Nothing has filtered through from the Turkish side, but sources close to the Palestinians underlined the importance of this tripartite meeting, which provided an opportunity to discuss Palestinian unity and the end of the division, especially after the Israeli aggression in Jerusalem and the West Bank and settlement activity. This succession of meetings and the one scheduled for Sunday come at a time when the Israeli-Palestinian peace process is at a standstill against a backdrop of violence in the occupied West Bank, the worst in years. At the beginning of July, the Zionist occupation army carried out a 48-hour raid on the town of Jenin and its adjacent refugee camp, the largest for many years in the West Bank under Israeli occupation since 1967. 12 Palestinians and an Israeli soldier were killed. In another development, Zionist Minister of National Security Itamar Ben-Gvir today stormed the compounds of Al-Aqsa Mosque in the occupied city of Al-Quds, along with dozens of other extremist settlers under heavy protection from the Zionist occupation forces. Ben-Gvir entered the Islamic holy site from El-Maghariba Gate along with other extremist settlers and performed Talmudic rituals. This comes at a time when occupation forces intensify measures against Palestinians coming from Jerusalem to enter the mosque, inspecting their IDs and briefly detaining them.
You are still tuned to Radio Alger International. Now I invite you to listen to the second part of our program with two timely broadcasts on schedule. I wish you a swell listening.
A story in an artwork. A weekly program that tells stories flavored with art.
Shabi or popular music in Algeria can be translated as Algerian portraits.
Yeah, Algerian portraits. It's about profile.
Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to our program, A Story in an Artwork. Today, we're going to talk about the novel and bestseller What the Day Owes the Night by Yasmina Khadra. The novel What the Day Owes the Night tells the story of Yunus and his daily life as a little boy, then as a young man, and finally as a mature man in an Algeria torn by passions and war. At the beginning of the novel, we are in 1930. Yunus was only 9 years old when he saw his father's fields ablaze just a few days before the harvest. He sees his father cry for the first time, and the family have to give up the land of their ancestors and leave. They go to settle in Oran in the miserable district back then of Jnan Jatu, and the father, full of courage, is quick to find a job and sweat hardly to win his bread and feed his family. There, young Yunus discovers both the inevitable misery his family is destined to go through, but also the hope that energizes the inhabitants of the patio. But nothing goes as planned, and bad luck seems to be hitting the family, especially since the very proud father refuses any kind of financial help from others. His difficult conditions, however, make him give up his pride and trust young Yunus with his brother. The uncle of Yunus was in better financial situation as he was a pharmacist. He was even married to a French woman. Both have no children and consider Yunus as their own son and ensure his education while taking good care of him. Yunus, however, never sees his family again, as he says in this passage. I never saw my mother or my sister again. I do not know what has become of them, if they are still of this world or if they are nothing more than dust among the dust. But I saw my father several times, about every 10 years, sometimes in the middle of a souk or market, or on a building site, sometimes alone, at the corner of a street or on the steps of an abandoned shed. I never succeeded to approach him. I had come to understand that he was not flesh and blood. His new environment starts to call him Jonas, European for Yunus, and the young boy lives divided between his Algerian origins and his French education and environment, just like his name, Jonas and Yunus. His uncle gets arrested by French colonial authorities because of his intellectual solidarity with the Algerian national cause, which was then spreading in the literate circles of the city. When he gets released, he will never be the same again, and the family moves outside the city to Rio Salado, now El Maleh. Yunus, or now Jonas, gradually makes friends there and integrate himself into the city's Romis or European community. He lives happy days with his friends who became indispensable to him. They are called Simon, Jean-Christophe, and Fabrice. They share their dreams of privileged teenagers and watch from afar the arrival of World War II and the rise of Algerian nationalism. And of course, as teenagers, they are also interested in girls. It is Emily, an exceptional, pretty young woman whom Yunus knew when he was younger, who creates division among the friends who are now grown-ups. She comes back to settle in the village and gets admired by all of Yunus' friends, but it is him that she loves. He loves her back, but because of a promise he made to Emily's mother, with whom he had a very brief affair. He cannot give in to loving Emily, who eventually marries Simon, his friend. Yunus also does not want to betray his friends, which makes him suffer all his life and feel alone and misunderstood. The struggle of Algeria for independence invades the heart of Yunus when he is unable to commit and take a side. He feels the urge to help his people, but he does not get involved. In a war for freedom, colonial Algeria lives its last moments, and while the three friends tear each other apart for the love of a woman, Emily, the two peoples, Algerians and French, fight for a country that everyone loves madly, as the author says in this passage. It was predictable. There was a people lying on the ground, on which you walked as if on grass. It was clear that one day or another they would stand again on their feet. As for Emily, her husband Simon dies during the Algerian Revolution, and she leaves to France, leaving behind her life in Algeria and her love for Yunus, who comes to a decision to be with Emily when it's too late, as we understand from this passage. Whoever misses the most beautiful story of his life will only be regretful, and all the sighs of the world cannot sway his soul. What the Day Owes the Night's novel Yasmina Khadra doesn't only tell a story, but also shares with the reader through his characters quotes on love, life, humanity, and inner struggle. It is also a book full of wisdom, where a lot of things are said between the lines. The novel also shows life of colonial Algeria from 1930 to 1962, during which Algerians were either marginalized or submitted to the French culture, but in both cases they were subject to racism on their own soil. In literary terms, Yunus or Jonas can seem enigmatic. He seems to live his life as a spectator and follows his destiny as if his life was mapped out by others. Quote, "Though there are things beyond our understanding, for the most part we are the architects of our own unhappiness." Unquote. Yunus may also be a symbol of the colonized people who tried to fit in the world imposed by the colonizer but could never surpass their origins. In addition to becoming a bestseller, What the Day Owes the Night won several awards, among which were Best Book of the Year by Lire magazine in 2008, the France Television Award, and the Berlin International Literature Award in 2010. The novel was also brought to the screen by Alexander Arcady in 2012, and the movie was a success as well. And though it was not 100% faithful to the novel, it made the story of Yunus and the name of Yasmina Khadra known worldwide.
Yunus! Yunus!
Je me souviendrai toujours de cette meurtre.
That's it for today's program, A Story in Artwork. Do join us, dear listeners, next week for another story.
Je sais pas qui vous êtes, je sais pas d'où vous venez, mais je m'appelle Jonas.
Qu'est-ce que je t'ai fait, Jonas?
A Story in an Artwork. A weekly program that tells stories flavored with art.
Anyone planning a trip to the Algerian city of Annaba simply has to make sure that they include a visit to Cap de Garde in their travel itinerary. Traveling to this stunning destination from Annaba takes you along picturesque stretches of beach, which will likely lure you to spend the entire day here soaking up the sun. Mohammed Berrazwan tells you about it.
Cap de Garde is known for its breathtaking views, and such a reputation is certainly not unfounded. Apart from a stunning stretch of coastline, the village of Saraidi offers visitors a chance to take in stunning views of oak forest, as it is situated in the middle of the forest at an elevation of 900 meters, just a short distance from the coast. Not far from Saraidi is the Massif de Ledoux, which is used for walking. In fact, most visitors to the area travel on foot, and the gorgeous natural beauty that surrounds one on the paths and roads through Cap de Garde make this well worth the effort. Another village worth visiting is the coastal village of Shataibi. The village is known for its fishing, and it has a wonderfully rustic sense of charm. When you visit Cap de Garde, you'll immediately understand why it has a reputation for fantastic vistas.